Hi guys, Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you a cool steampunk sort of necklace. So this project is going to be inspired by this bead that I made maybe 5 to 6 years back. So it's one of my old ones and you can see how badly finished it was, but I like to go back through my bin of ideas. I keep all of my beads, the ones that don't work and the ones that do work, so I keep everything. And I go back sometimes to look for ideas, and this one I came across and I really liked the idea. It wasn't executed as well as I would have liked, but I'm coming back to it today, and so we're going to be using this idea today to create our necklace. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create the faux leather that is in the background here, and I'm going to be using Primo today. And I thought burnt umber would be a really nice colour for leather. You can create your own custom colour, but we're going to be doing a few surface effects on this that's going to manipulate this so it doesn't look like all one colour. And this was rolled out on my thickest setting, which is about 4mm thick. Okay, so now we're going to use 99.8% alcohol to dry out the clay surface. Now this can't be below 95%, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, and so before we do that, I actually want to drip a few alcohol inks on. I have teak wood and espresso. So I'll start with the teak wood. I'm just going to drip that on. And just brush it around. There's no particular pattern here. I just want to pop this on so it's going to stain the surface of my clay. And that is the entire purpose. Now usually with white the staining is going to be really apparent, but we're starting with a brown backing, so the stain and the colour of the ink is not going to be very clear, but you will see that it creates a very slight effect, which is what I want. So I'm just brushing it on. And this is going to stain that clay a little bit, so when we do our technique later, it will look quite nice. So that's the teak wood brushed on, and it's made it a bit darker. I'll bring over the espresso, drip that on. Okay, and you can use any sorts of browns you want. If you want your leather to be lighter, use lighter alcohol inks. But I want this to be a darker version. I want it to be a nice dark leather effect. Okay, and I've just dripped those around in a random fashion. Now I'm going to let this sit for maybe about 5 minutes to let those alcohol inks sit on the clay and absorb, and be absorbed. And then once they've sunk in, we can continue. Okay, so now that it's been sitting for a little while, we can use our alcohol to give it a light spray. And then use a wet wipe to gently dry it. And that's going to remove a bit of the alcohol inks, but that's fine. Just carry on spraying and dabbing it away, and each time you do this it's going to start drying the clay. Okay. And give a blow on it every now and then as well, because that will dry out the piece as well. And so I'll probably spray around 10 to 15 times to get it to dry out so that we can get a nice fine crackle. Okay, so I've sprayed it a few times and it has dried out. I can feel that it's all dry and it's going to crackle nicely. It's already starting to crackle a little bit along the side. So bring over a sheet of black that has been rolled out on a thin setting, which is my third thinnest setting for me. Just a thin setting, no particular setting really. I'll just bring that over and you'll lay this over. And this will just give it some stability, and it'll also mean that we can roll it down a bit so that we can expose that crackle. Okay, and I'm just pressing, make sure I've got air bubbles and things out. And then just trim around the edges. There we are. Okay. Now what I like to do is I like to do this by hand rather than putting it through the pasta machine at first. So hopefully there you can see that it is starting to crack. I just want some light ones, I don't want it to be really thick cracks. Yeah, hopefully you can see those starting to appear. And now we're going to antique these cracks using the alcohol ink that we had earlier. Just making sure that I'm pulling them apart enough and that I've got all of them before I antique, because I only want to do that once. Okay. And this clay was already quite dry before I started, so the cracks are quite distinct. Now again, we've just basically dried the top of the clay, we haven't cured it. Okay, and I'm just going to pull in both directions, stretch this out more than it already is, and I'm just busy sticking it down, so I'm using the clay and sticking it back to the tile so that it will stay stretched out. There we are. Okay, now bring over your alcohol inks, and I'm going to be using both of them. I'm just going to drip it and brush over the surface. And you want a nice thick thick cover of alcohol ink, because you want it to antique those cracks. If you don't have enough alcohol ink on here, it's not going to go through and antique those. Hopefully you can see there how it's pulsating out and highlighting those cracks. I'm just going to brush it over to encourage it to antique all of them. Okay, so that was the teak wood. Now I'm going to bring over the espresso. Drip that on, and they're just slightly different colours, enough to just add a little bit of depth. You can just use one colour if you only have one dark brown. It's not necessary to use both. It's just to have another brown, just adds a little bit more colour to the piece. It's very slight, so you don't have to. Okay, now I'll just finish up brushing through, making sure that I've got everywhere. Okay. Then you'll bring over your alcohol ink, your alcohol, and a wet wipe again. Spray, and you don't let it sit this time, and give it a nice heavy spray. And this will also help the ink dissipate into the cracks. And wipe. And this is just to remove the surface part. And now I'm rubbing quite a bit to remove that alcohol ink. You can see it's coming off on the wet wipe there. And now I'm only going to rub hard in some areas, and other areas I'm not going to rub as hard, so that I get some variety in colour. And this is all very subtle, but it all adds to the realism. then blow on it to dry it. And here's what it should look like once it's completely dry. So I'm not sure if the camera is going to pick up on the depth of colour, so let me just brighten this up just a little bit to see if you guys can see the difference in colour here, because you can definitely tell in real life where you can see what it looks like. You can see that it has texture, it's got a nice real texture to it, and it's got difference in colour. And now it's a little dull at the moment because the clay is a little dry, but when this is buffed and sanded and things like that, you'll be able to see the difference in colour and things like that. Okay, so let me just pop that off to the side and we'll get to the next bit. So the next bit is going to be this inside bit here where we have this cog. We've done the letter so far, we now want to do this cog. The way we're going to do that is we're going to bring over a sheet of white that was rolled out on the thickest setting by pasta machine, because we're going to be using this as a bezel for some resin, so it needs to be fairly thick. And we're also going to use real little cogs. And what we want to do first before we press those cogs in is we also want to bring over a cog as a template for cutting out our piece. I just want to gently press that in enough that I'm going to be able to see the outline of it. And this is so that I know where I need to press in my little bits of, in my little steampunk pieces, because I don't want to go and spend ages texturing places that I don't need to. So I'll just bring them over and press them in so that I create a texture. And I'll just continue doing that the whole way around. There we are. And so you can see that I'm getting alcohol ink from my fingers onto the white. That's fine. This is a good place to use your off-white, because we're going to be putting alcohol ink and all sorts of things on here. Okay, so now what you want to do now that you've pressed them in is you want to get them out. This can be probably the trickiest part. Yeah, they should come out pretty easily. There you go. And they need to be leaving a nice deep imprint, so that when you sand it's not going to get affected or anything like that. Okay, so there's a piece. Now you're going to need to just trim around the outside here, and not the thing accurately, just roughly trim around the outside. And remove that. Okay. Then you can also roughly trim around the inside as well, because you don't want to have to dye this if you don't have to. Okay, and then bring over the teak wood and espresso inks that you had earlier. And I'm gonna pop them on my brush so that I have more control over where they're going. Okay. And give a good cover. Oops, dripped a bit too much there. That's fine. We want a nice thick cover of ink and just drip it all around because you want it to stain that white. And what we're going to do is we're going to wipe away some of the alcohol ink, but we want it to stay in those fissures that we made with our cogs. So I'll just use this to remove most of it on the outside here, so that's not going to get all sticky and things like that. I'm being very careful because I don't want to damage the clay or anything like that. I'll give it a light spray because that can help remove ink as well. I'll just give you a spray with the 99% alcohol ink. There, that's just to remove from the outside of it. Now the rest I can sand away later. But I did want to remove a little bit so that I can bring over this cog again. I just want to get this into the right spot. Actually, there's a stretch just a little bit, so I want to get inside. Those lines. Then I'm going to trace out my cog. All the way around. Okay, and that's how it looks. So let me just take these cogs out of the way. And you can see that it's not a perfect cutout. That's fine. I'm going for a kind of organic look here. So you can see that we've got those cog ends, but they're not going to be perfect ends. But it looks really nice. So we're going to sand the front here. It's not going to remain as brown as that. It's going to be a little bit more white. But you'll pop this in the oven for about 40 minutes at Primo's recommended temperature. And I've got a few other cog templates that I'm going to be cutting out. I need to do a few beads, so we're going to be going from the largest, which is this one, all the way up to a smaller one. So there we are. You can see those there. So I'm going to be using all of those cogs to make a few beads. And then you need to make a few of these extra to not go on top of the leather. So I'd say, oh, in all, we're probably going to need around 8 beads in all, possibly. I'm not sure. We'll see. So we'll probably have around 8 beads, but I'll have to see. So I'll show you after I've cut them all out, and then I'll tell you how many beads you need, because I can't really tell at the moment because they're not as big as they're going to be, but I'll tell you how big they are. But you want to make a few that are going to go on top of the leather and a few that are going to just stand on their own like this. Okay, so I finished up the cogs and I changed the design just a little bit along the way. So let me just bring that over. Here we are. So I decided that I wanted to use some of these cogs that I got from eBay. They're really nice and they look quite pretty and decorative, and they're different compared to these ones that I've made. So these ones are going to be the ones that are backed with the leather and have the resin in them, and then these will almost serve as links in the design. So I've designed it like that. You could make more cogs along here if you wanted to, but I've decided that I like it this way. So we're going to do it like that. Okay, and then with the leather, what I've done is I've popped this onto a sheet of plain paper, and I've just burnished the back with paper just to smooth it out, because it was a little bit rough and bumpy. So now that it's been smoothed out, I'm ready to texture it. And I'm just going to use these 2 pieces of sponge that I got from Towards Polymer Clay. And I'm going to start with a large one. And I'm just going to press it in so that I have control over what I'm doing, because I don't want to squish this too much. And now it's important to do this before you put the cogs on and cut it out, because you'll end up squishing the cogs if you did this when they were on. So I'm just going to go around and get this nice interesting texture on the back. And you can use any texture you want. You don't even have to have a texture if you want. It's just, it covers up any imperfections and things like that. So having a texture on the back is quite nice in a way. Okay, and then I'm going to bring over the other sponge, which is smaller. And I'm just going to press that onto. Okay, so now we've got an interesting texture on the back. I'll just flip that up and you can see that this has been sitting overnight, because I started this tutorial quite late at night, and so it's been sitting around, and so this will also make it a little bit more flexible. So it's good to let it sit around, let the alcohol ink sit, and for it all to seep in. So don't worry about letting it sit for a little while. Okay, then I'm going to bring over one of these little cogs. I'm just going to position it. And then this is the size of the circle that I'm going to use. Now before we do cut it out, we need to colour the edges of the cog because it's white. So I'll bring over that espresso and a small brush. Just drip that onto the brush. And the point here is just to get it to not be like blaring white along the edges, because the front over here is antiqued, and so it's going to look a little weird if the edges are white. So I'm just going to paint along the edges in the same colours that I used, and this will blend in. You don't have to worry about the back because the back's not going to be showing. If you were going to use these cogs as links, you would want to do the back, but we're not going to be using them as links, so you just have to do these sides. Okay, now I'll bring over this again. Just pop this down to the right position and gently press. Okay, and now we've got a little bit of spill off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over a wet wipe and spray that with my 99% alcohol. Just wipe away in that area so it doesn't look like it's not part of the design. Because I might not even sand these because I really like how they look the way it is. Okay, and also you might want to colour the inside ring over here. Completely forgot to do that. But you do want to colour inside here as well. And don't worry if a little bit gets onto the bottom layer of leather. That's fine because we're all using the same colours that we had before. So it's all going to blend into each other. Just making sure that I get all of those areas. There we are. And just wipe away any bits. And there you are. Okay, and I'll bring over my cutter. And you can have it off center if you want. I don't want it off center, so my head needs to be here so I can see. Okay. And then I'm going to press down evenly and spin so that it's evenly cut out. And I'm just going to move that to a different piece of paper. And I'm just gently going to go around these edges because it's domed slightly, so I want to just cut again. Here we go. And I'm just going to bring over a pin and just roll along the sides so that I don't have to smooth it or anything. So I'm just gently pressing to smooth out any imperfections. And I'm just using a small piercing pin for this because my roller would be too big and clunky to do this. So a piercing pin will do just fine. Okay, just about done. And I'll just use my finger to do the last little bit. Smooth off any cracks and things along that edge here. Okay, and there we are, that's your bead. And then what I want to do is it's going to be a link, so I want to find the place where I'm going to have them link together. I think I like it there. So I'm going to make a little hole there and a little hole there, just to remind me where I need to pop my holes in. I'm not going to do that now. I will do it later when we're drilling our holes. And there we are. I'm going to go and make a few of these. 7 to be exact. And then when I'm done, I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so there is one last thing that I did need to do. We're trying to imitate leather. So leather generally has little punches around the edge. So I thought I'll just bring over this needle tool. And we'll do a ring of dots around the edge of the leather. And now some of them might not appear because of the cracks that we have, but that's fine because it actually adds quite a bit. You would think that this wouldn't add a lot, but it really makes it look finished. Okay. So I'm almost done here, and then I can show you all of the other ones because I've got the others all done. So it's quick and easy and it looks really nice. Okay, then just bring it over a cutter and just gently move it back into place because punching those holes can distort the shape just a little bit. Okay. Then you'll want to just smooth over those edges again. Okay, now let me just bring it over the other. I can show you what it's going to look like. Yeah, let me just zoom out. There we go. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like, and it's got these other little cogs. And we'll just string that and we'll all have links in. So one of these holes will actually become the hole that we're going to attach a wire to, and we'll string this all together. So here's what the backs looks like. And I'm going to pop all of these beads into the oven for about 45 minutes at Primo's recommended temperature, so they're all nice and baked. And then I'm probably not going to sand these cogs because I really like how they look. And then we can apply the resin, drill the holes and start assembling. Okay, so here they are out of the oven, and you can see that the colour has changed a little bit, and I think I am going to sand the tops of these. So just bring this over to the side for the moment. Now just start with one, and I'm going to use my polishing papers for this. And I just want to lightly sand this front bit. So I'm going to make sure that I keep it flat and sand. And it's going to take a little while to get that ink off, and I don't want it to be really bright white. If I wanted that, I would have antiqued it with paint. I just want to brighten it up a little bit so that those cogs shine through a little bit more. There we go. So that one versus that one. So it's just brightened it up just a tad. And now I'm going to keep this matte for the most part. So I'm just going to sand it on my 400 grit, and then I'll leave it. I'm not going to go up any higher. And so I'll sand all of these just like that. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to drill holes. So I'm just going to go and position my drill in one of these holes that's already been made. And well, it's not already been made, but it's already been pointed out. There we are. So you'll make a hole in one of these little things that you've indented into the piece, and then make another hole on the other side so that they match. There, you can see that. Okay, and I've done that with all of the other pieces as well. So now we're ready to put resin in here. Okay, so the next step is to get our resin ready. Now I'm going to buff my pieces after the resin has cured. I'm not going to put Renaissance wax on them, I'm just going to buff them, but that will be best done after I have done the resin. So this is just a resin plunger, and I've let the resin settle to the bottom. And now I'm just going to open this up, and then I'm going to push on it to get an equal amount of ice resin to come out. And this is a great way to make sure that your resin has been mixed properly. Okay, there we go. And then I'll just pop the cap back on, and then we'll mix. Okay, and I'm using ice resin today because it's really nice and clear, it's a doming resin, and also it has a nice long working time because we're going to be working with some caulks and things to put into the holes, and so we want a nice long working time so that we can have enough time to make sure that we like what we've put inside the holes. So if you're using a different resin, just make sure that you have at least a half an hour of working time. It's winter here at the moment, so I'm going to have about 45 minutes working time. I won't need that much time, but I like ice resin for that reason, because it really is good in that aspect. It gives you a lot of time to make sure that you've got it just right. So now I'm just mixing it, and I want to make sure that it's crystal clear, and then I'll mix for another minute, 2 minutes, just to make sure that it is properly mixed in. So I'll probably be mixing here for maybe 5 to 6 minutes before this is completely clear. But it has to be clear. If it's not clear, it's not going to cure properly. So I'll just carry on mixing and try to avoid adding air bubbles until it's clear. Okay, so I've let this sit for a little while. Now I'm going to just use a straw to quickly blow off the surface bubbles. Okay, then I'll bring over my resin mat. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay a small amount of resin in the bottom here. And this will help prevent our clogs from floating around. They'll stick better to the surface. It will just make the process a lot easier when it comes to laying down the cogs. So just put a really thin layer of resin, and you can touch it to all of the sides as well, because that's going to help the resin sit, and then you don't have to worry about that later on. And then just quickly blow any bubbles. And just make sure that you got everywhere. Okay. Then I'll just use a tweezer, because I've got a few cogs over here. Let me just bring that over. Just trying to fit this all on camera. There we are. So here I've picked out a bunch of different cogs and things, and I'm just going to use a pair of tweezers to help me place them. Okay, and the resin will help it sit properly and things like that. And so you want to have this pile of cogs prepared before you pour your resin, because it will take you a little while to scratch through and find what you want to find. So there's a few cool little bits and pieces in here. And then once it's in the resin, you don't want to be dipping your pliers in, so just use a skewer, that's something that is disposable, so that you can move things around. I don't want them all touching. There we are. And you might want to layer them a little bit, so you might want to have one on top of the other. Completely up to you. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to bring over this one little small piece, pop it in there, and that I'm happy with. Now I'll just use this resin again. I'll gently pour that over the top. And you might have to reposition a few things. Just make sure that everything's covered with that resin. Okay. There we are. Then use your straw to just blow away the bubbles. And the bubbles will continue rising to the surface, so every now and then you might want to just blow on it again to get rid of the bubbles. Okay, and so then I'll let that cure for 24 hours, and I'll proceed to do the same with all of the other cogs, and then when that's done we can actually start assembling the necklace. Okay, so my pieces have been curing for about 24 hours now, and here you can see them. You can see they're all nice and shiny. See there? And just check the backs for any resin. If there is any, just pick it off. Okay, and so now we are ready to start assembling. Okay, so I've just laid them out in the way that I want. Now I've already got my cogs ready with some jump rings on them, so I don't have to worry about going and finding those jump rings. So let me just, that's supposed to go on the end. And there we are. Now we're ready to start assembling. So I'll just open up one of the jump rings, and I'll bring over my bead, find that hole, and fit that jump ring through. and close up. And I'm going to twist the jump ring so that that opening goes into the bead so that it is hidden. It just looks more neat that way. Then I'll do the same here. Find that hole, wiggle the jump ring through. Can take a little bit of patience. There we go. Don't force it through, just gently maneuver it around. And then close that hole of the jump ring by putting it back in. And then attach that to that one, and you continue attaching until you're finished up. Okay, so I finished linking it together, and now I'm just going to attach the clasp. So I'm just going to open a jump ring, grab one part of my hook, attach that to the last cog on the piece. There we go. Open up the next one, attach that to the clasp, and attach that to the last cog. Now I got these cogs from eBay. If you type in cogs on eBay, you'll find these sorts of cogs. And you can make them yourself as well. I just thought they would be nice to use them in this tutorial. So that is basically it for this tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful to you. It's a really fun project. I managed to finish this within 24 hours, including, well, not including the resin. It took me around 12 hours to complete the entire project, with me going in and out of the studio, so it wasn't even full 12 hours. And then you do need to allow 24 hours for the resin to cure, but you can do other stuff while the resin's curing. So it's a really fun, easy, quick project that makes quite a statement. It's quite interesting. I'm thinking if you use stronger jump rings here, you make them quite a bit thicker, it would make quite an interesting belt possibly, or you could just wear it around your waist to imitate the look of a belt, but it would look quite interesting that way with jeans and other sorts of rustic clothes. So anyway, that is basically it for this project. I did enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and if you did, please do let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.